Okay, we're now 4 weeks into the NFL season. What have we learned? We've learned that the Philadelphia Eagles are one of the best teams in football. That's just a fact. They're 4-0. They're one of two teams that are undefeated, including the Buffalo Bills. The problem is you wouldn't think it if you're an Eagles fan because the last 4 weeks have been frustrating, to say the least. You don't really know what team you're getting. Particular half comes around and it's like, am I getting the good team? Am I getting the bad team? But they somehow find a way to win. They've persevered. They've come back from a huge deficit against the LA Rams. They almost blow a game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but they win. And I think the problem with Eagles fans is really twofold when you look at this team. The first is that if we've learned anything from 2 years ago and how that season went, it kind of tells you that winning, and this sounds ridiculous, but winning, you can't just go like, oh, well, they won and that's all that matters at times, because it is how you win. And what I mean is, like, that team was, 7-1 or something, and then the wheels fell off. And then chinks in the armor started appearing. All that stuff caught up to them. So I think a lot of Eagles fans remember that. And remember, oh, yeah, like, I fell for this trick before. This Eagles team winning football games but not doing it pretty. And then all of a sudden, they went to Tampa Bay in a playoff game and got demolished, embarrassed in Jason Kelce's last game. I think the other thing is the last time we saw the Eagles before this season was the Super Bowl, and they were up 40-6 and pulled their starters. So we, as Eagles fans, keep expecting that to show up, and it hasn't. And you immediately start going like, what's changed? Is Kevin Patula really the difference? From 40-6 in the Super Bowl? Is it more than that? Is Nick Sirianni meddling again? That's kind of what I think. Is it the Mekhi Becton replacement of Tyler Steen, who hasn't, in my opinion, looked all that great? Like, what is going on with this team where they can't put 4 quarters of football together where you have the offense clicking and the defense clicking? Because so far it seems like, when the offense isn't clicking, the defense bails them out. When the defense looks a little suspect, the offense bails them out. It's been a frustrating mix. And I think a large part of that is the fact that that Super Bowl made us believe that this team was going to do that every week. But I think when you really take a step back and you look at what has happened in the last 4 weeks, let's just throw some facts out there. They have played 3 of their 4 opponents in the last 4 weeks were playoff teams last year. You had Tampa Bay, you had the LA Rams, and then you had the Tampa Bay, LA, and who was the other one? I never like stopping videos, but the fact that I forgot that they played the Kansas City Chiefs in week 2, literally the team that they beat in the Super Bowl, smash, thumbs down for that. Bad job by me. Pat doesn't know ball. But 3 out of their 4 opponents in their first month of the season were playoff teams, including the team that represented the AFC in the Super Bowl. And I think one of the large parts, as I kind of talked about just now, is the fact that they beat the Chiefs 40-6. They demolished them. And then you look at that Chiefs game that we watched, both teams looked bad. Both teams didn't look good. And the Chiefs you kind of understand because they're missing some key pieces, and some key pieces ended up leaving that game early. The Eagles, you went like, I saw this team 7 months ago embarrass this squad. What's changed? But the fact is, when you beat the good teams, which is what they did, when you beat playoff teams from the previous year, it's a feather in your cap. Oh, and by the way, they're playing Denver in week 5, who is also a playoff team. And then after that, it gets easier. You're playing, the Giants, you're playing Minnesota, and then you're playing the Giants again. Like that, you should be able to beat up on those teams. But when you look around the NFL, and you look at some of the teams that were supposed to be, the contenders of the NFC, do you see it? Like, I watched the Monday night game with Green Bay. Matt LaFleur is not a good coach, and I'm somebody that's sitting there saying that Nick Sirianni isn't a good coach. And maybe we're lucky to have Sirianni considering what Matt LaFleur is doing. He cost his team the game. And by the way, they're 2-2. They're losing to, or they're having ties, or 1-1. Like, the ties to Dallas, a Dallas team that is without CeeDee Lamb, and you got diced apart by them. And that's supposed to be one of the Eagles' premier, contenders for the NFC crown. Like, nobody's really stood out in the first month except the Buffalo Bills, who had an amazing comeback that was handed to them really by a Derrick Henry fumble, and the Eagles. Both teams are 4-0. When you look at the division, next team is 2-2. You know, and look, a large part of that is Jaden Daniels being out with an injury. You wonder if Washington would be in a different spot had he not been injured, but that's kind of a part of the game. It's not pretty how the Eagles have done it. You know, they're not doing it with style points. And I often say, you know, you're kind of looking for webbed toes on Margot Robbie because you're winning, and that's great. And that's the most important thing is that you're winning football games because Lord knows it would be a bitch fest if they had lost any of those games. But you're winning. You're not doing it the way that we expected them to do it. Saquon Barkley, yet to have a 100-yard game. You've got A.J. Brown averaging 37 yards a game. Devontae Smith hasn't really been involved in the offense like he should. Jalen Hurts, at times, has looked more like a runner and not a quarterback. Although, when he needed to throw the ball, looked pretty damn good against the Rams. So, the offense clearly has not hit their stride. The defense is not only dealing with some injuries, but also some rookie mistakes. Like Andrew Makuba, we saw that against Tampa Bay this past week, but he's looked good. He's flashed at times, but he's looked a little suspect at times. You expect that. So I think when you look at this Eagles squad, a lot of our expectations for how we think they should have done in the first 4 weeks is predicated on how they did last year. Last year, you had two rookies in Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean come in and not look like rookies. So when Andrew Makuba might look like a rookie in a play, you go like, damn, what's going on here? And then, you know, you ended up having a reclamation project to Mekhi Becton, who looked incredible, and now you have to replace him with Tyler Steen. You have a game against the Rams where your right tackle, the best right tackle in football, one of the best right tackles to ever play the game is out in the first quarter, and you have to replace him with a guy in Fred Johnson who just started practicing right tackle that week. To the point where they weren't even sure that he could do it, so they put Matt Pryor in, who got undressed. The Eagles have had to overcome a little bit of adversity. I'm not saying it's a ton, all right? I'm not saying like cry for them. But when you look at last year, when I think they had everybody healthy except one starter from the opening week, everybody stayed healthy. Kudos to the training staff. And now this season, you're dealing with Stinger and Lane Johnson. Nolan Smith's out for a month. And look, they're not debilitating injuries. But when you factor everything in and you go, oh, okay, yeah, 4-0. Shit, I'll take that. Because you figure that this team will eventually hit their stride. The problem is we were blinded by, really, it's two games. It's the Washington game and the NFC Championship game. And then it's the Super Bowl, where they looked unbeatable. It reminds you a lot of 2018 when, look, that game against Atlanta was ugly. They barely escaped. The game against the Rams was ugly. You know, they kind of let them get back into it, and they escaped because the Rams were driving, and, you know, it ended up coming up clutch when you needed to. That's what good teams do. They come up clutch when you need to. But then it was overshadowed because the next week they absolutely obliterated Washington, and then 2 weeks later they obliterated the reigning Super Bowl champs in Kansas City. So all of this is to say, like, the Eagles, I think, will be okay. They need to hit their stride. And look, I'm as guilty as you. Like, I've been frustrated at what I've watched at times. I've been sitting there going, you know, what is this offense? It looks like Nick Sirianni's meddling again. I've seen it before. What is going on? But I think when you actually take a step back outside of the in-game reaction that we all have as fans, and you take a step back and you just look at the landscape of the NFL, where no team has really established themselves as like, holy shit, they're good, other than, I guess, the Buffalo Bills. But then the Buffalo Bills have a propensity to choke because Sean McDermott's a baby shit soft coach who can't win the big one. I wish him nothing but the worst. So when you look at that team and you look at the Eagles, okay, I get it. But that team, you know, they ended up coming back from behind against a Ravens team, just like the Eagles came back from behind against a Rams team. Good teams find ways to win those games. Good teams find ways to close out a Tampa Bay Buccaneers team. Even if you let them back in, you find a way to close it out. That's what the Eagles did. I think the Eagles will be fine. I think after 4 weeks, we're in a good spot. 4-0 is a hell of a lot better than 3-1, 2-2, 1-2. Yeah, hit thumbs up for that amazing analysis. Now's the part where I ask you guys to subscribe to the channel. Hit thumbs up if you want to. Smash that thumbs down button, because how the fuck did I forget the Chiefs? I mean, embarrassing, right? But let me know what you guys think. Let me know in the comment section if you guys are on board, or if you guys think, no, like this is all fool's gold and they got to clean this up and that up, and that's fine. We can have differing opinions. I'm going to go eat the wrap that I got at Wawa an hour ago.